Ukraine is one of the largest countries in Europe by area and population. It declared independence in 1991 after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Since then, Ukraine has been actively developing as a peaceful, democratic, European-focused country, implementing reforms and seeking to join the European Union. However, the strict totalitarian Russia has always sought to capture and subjugate freedom like Ukraine, just as it always did in the past centuries during the Russian Empire and later on in the communist Soviet Union times. In February 2014, the Ukrainian people drove out the pro-Russian authoritarian president, Viktor Yanukovych, after large-scale protests. Russia sheltered him and forcibly annexed the Crimean Peninsula, and then launched separatist insurgencies in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions of eastern Ukraine. For a long period of 8 years, Russia's covert hybrid war against Ukraine continued. A new, terrible, and large-scale war began on the European continent on the 24th of February 2022. Russia's unprovoked full-scale armed invasion of neighboring peaceful Ukraine has become the largest military conflict in the world since the Second World War. Russia used the entire arsenal of modern weapons, except for weapons of mass destruction. The economic consequences of the war were felt by many countries far beyond the theater of battle. The Russian military has been committing war crimes on a massive scale, occupying Ukrainian lands, towns, and villages, murdering and raping civilians, destroying housing and digital infrastructure, and deporting Ukrainian kids. Leading democracies, including the United States and the EU, have supported Ukraine and sided with the light and good, freedom, and European values. On the other side are those who support darkness and evil, Russian despotism of the worst kind. Large-scale fighting is taking place in all three natural elements, at sea, in the sky, and on land. Ukraine's military intelligence, whose symbol is an owl with a sword pointed at the center of Imperial Russia, has become a key element of armed resistance to aggression. The emblem of the defense intelligence of Ukraine bears the Latin slogan, Sapiens Dominabitur Astris, the wise will rule over the stars.
The furthest piece of the Ukrainian land, in the middle of the Black Sea, is praised in legends. Zmiinyi Island is a strategic point. It greatly changes the situation in the Black Sea. The temple of the ancient Greek warrior Achilles, renowned for his cult of courage, was built here in remote antiquity. Special military intelligence forces landed and stormed Zmiinyi Island. What follows is unique footage of the heroic battle of the 8th of May. Military intelligence took an active part in it. We fought hard to liberate this island, and at last, managed to do it. The Russian cruiser Moskva was told to fuck off via radio transmission. Then it was sunk by Neptune missiles. That ship had no business being in the Black Sea. The battle for Zmiinyi Island is a symbol of Ukrainian victory over the Russian aggressors at sea. The island is located across the mouth of the Danai River near the Romanian territorial waters of the Black Sea. The area of this small rocky island is just 20 hectares. It has attracted travelers, historians, and conquerors since ancient times. After Ukrainian independence, Zmiinyi's location made a crucial piece of the land to hold to control the Bessarabian coastline of the Black Sea, the southern part of the Odessa Oblast. In fact, Zmiinyi Island defines the territorial waters of Ukraine. That's why it was important to occupy and develop the rocky island to maintain its vital activity. There have long been no snakes there, just many birds. There are no trees or bushes there. Bile, White Village, is the only population center, consisting of a frontier post and a restored lighthouse. Periodic military exercises have been conducted over the years on the island. It is far from here to Odessa, 120 kilometers. However, it is much closer to the Ukrainian coast, 37 kilometers, than to any Russian land. From the very beginning of its war of aggression, the Russian army decided to invade the island to control it. They wanted to have a base for their military forces close to Ukraine, as the Crimean Peninsula, occupied by the Russians since 2014, is over 300 kilometers away. At the beginning of the war, there were just about 80 military personnel on Zmiinyi Island, mainly border guards of the Izmail detachment and Marines of the 35th Brigade. Most of the few civilians there operated the Lighthouse OS. Bohdan Hotsky, the commander of the border guards and the whole garrison of the island, remembers the beginning of the war. The Russian military ship demanded a civil vessel to change its route. The island is said to be mined. We realized that there was a presence of military ships in our responsibility area or near it. However, we did not see them. We heard only their negotiations on the open 16th channel. It was obvious for the island garrison that there was a threat. However, there was no clear understanding of the bigger war. I alerted forces accordingly. The commander of the Marines and the commander of the company that was there notified their people as well. The air forces were on alert. There was a subunit on the island. Everybody expected an attack. On the morning of the 24th of February, there were no enemy ships around the island. However, the voice of the Russian aggressors was heard for the first time on an open international ship communication channel. Rather than issuing threats, it sought to tempt Ukrainian listeners to commit high treason. Here is a radio interception of the first address of the Russians. You have the chance of a normal and fair life without taking part in a fratricidal war advancing the interests of transatlantic instigators. If you refuse to take part in the fratricidal war and choose the right side, you will have an opportunity to return to your civilian life with dignity or to continue your military service in the armed forces of the Russian Federation. You will have a stable salary and good career prospects. You will be accorded decent housing, be able to retire with a high military pension, and live in a large, united country. Make the right decision and you will stay alive. Do the right thing. Let us know of your consent on this channel. Raise a white flag and follow our instructions. Lay down your weapons. Stop communicating with your headquarters. The Russians tempted the Ukrainian defenders to repeat the fate of the soldiers who betrayed their country in Crimea in 2014 and went over to the side of the enemy. However, this time their efforts were in vain. Nobody agreed, so they soon escalated to direct threats. You are completely isolated in the target zone of our weapons. In the case of resistance, you will be killed. Chances of survival are zero. Think of your children and relatives who need you and love you. They are waiting for you to come home alive and well. It will be over soon. You will go on with your usual life. Make the right decision. You will stay alive. Let us know of your intention to collaborate on the channels of communication, channel 16. Suspend the use of your radar system and means of transmission with the mainland. You must surrender and lay down your arms. You will then await further instructions. This time there were not only verbal threats. Near the island, Russian military ships appeared. At first, there was a patrol vessel, Vasil Bykov. Then came the flagship of the Russian Navy, the guided missile cruiser, Moskva. The Moskva cruiser controlled the navy that followed them and the aviation that entered later. It was clear that we would not overcome when the air forces appeared. They bombed us. We could not do anything. Our aviation could not approach. Our means of destruction of air targets were damaged. It was clear that we would not win that round. The flagship of the Russian Navy, the guided missile Moskva cruiser, weighed 11,500 tons. Its range was 8,000 miles. It was arrogantly dubbed Killer of Aircraft Carriers. It was, more accurately, a large military vessel designed for the ocean, not the small Black Sea. Its weapons consisted of powerful artillery of various kinds, anti-ship and anti-aircraft missiles, and strong air defense and radar systems. On paper, our forces were extremely outmatched by theirs. At first, the island came under Russian artillery fire. Later, enemy aviation joined. Initially, there were no losses. The garrison was constantly enjoined to give up. On the evening of February 24th, the now famous conversation was intercepted on land by the Ismail border detachment, 50 kilometers away from the island. In reply to another demand from the Russia to give up, an angry fighter told the guided missile Moskva to fuck off. Zmiinyi Island, this is the Moskva. I repeat. Lay down your arms. Surrender or you will be attacked. Do you copy? Over. Moskva, fuck you. This hilarious and bold reply of an unknown border guard to the enemy cruiser's threat may have been an obscenity, but it became one of the most popular patriotic slogans with lightning speed. A soon-published postage stamp with the symbolic representation of this dialogue became one of the most widespread images of the war. However, in the evening, communication with the garrison of the island was lost. It was captured by the Russians. The border guards and Marines were taken prisoner. The invaders immediately delivered a lot of modern equipment and weapons to the island. It was gravely important that the enemy not possess control of the area. The Russian systems of radio-electronic intelligence and monitoring, unmanned aerial vehicles, and strong air defense systems could do great harm. They could endanger our aviation. The Grad and Tornado G weapons could reach the coast and halt any shipping. Having just started the war, Russia built a massive line of control over the Ukrainian Black Sea water area. It captured Zmiinyi Island. The flagship of the Russian Navy and smaller ships constantly patrolled this district and controlled gas-producing towers of the Chornomornaftogaz company, so-called Boyko towers, that were seized during the annexation of the Crimea. To destroy such a military system, it was necessary to get rid of the most terrible element of it, the Moskva cruiser. But how to do that? The naval forces of Ukraine have never had similar class ships in their combat arsenal. Any weapon systems on the far more modest Ukrainian naval vessels could not harm the Moskva significantly. A strong air defense system protected the cruiser from the air.
Розпочати підготовчі роботи до першого пуску.
Прийняв, я піон, прийом.
This is footage from June 2020. At the firing ground, Ulubiai, the last military tests of the Neptune anti-ship missile system took place in the Odessa Oblast. The system was designed by engineers of the Kiev State Luch Division. These powerful missiles are named after the ancient Roman god of the sea, Neptune. Their flight range is 300 kilometers. Their subsonic speed is 900 kilometers per hour. In addition, they can maneuver. In the last trajectory, they sped at an ultra-low altitude of 3 to 10 meters over the sea, making the missile invisible to the enemy's radar. It is also very hard to visually identify before the missile strikes. Aviation officers were involved in the last test to control missiles' flight and make adjustments for the next launch.
Вас понял.
The chief designer of the Luch division, Ola Koristilov, is considered the godfather of many modern missile systems known for their accuracy. At that moment, he was more nervous than usual. Because an anti-ship long-range missile was a new and extremely important invention. Previously, there was nothing that could strike big ships at a great distance. So with such a large navy, the Russians totally dominated at sea. These were the last tests after years of designing, engineering and experimentation. The warhead of the missile weighs 150 kilograms.
Высота 5. 4. Дальность 4, высота 4, я 36. И попадание. Видели взрыв,
The pilots reported that the missile had not just exploded, but hit the target. The design and weapons teams were overjoyed. In June 2002, the commander of the Ukrainian Navy, Vice Admiral Alexei Naispapa, was perhaps the happiest of all about the successful firing test of the Neptune. At last, he had a weapon that could hit and destroy big enemy ships from a great distance, a weapon that could protect our coasts. In December 2020, the commander of the Navy announced that the Neptunes would be ready for military use in the spring of 2020. In spring, the Neptunes will be ready for use in the armed forces of Ukraine. There will be a range of qualification and test firings. Some equipment is already bought. In the spring, we will have a division set of the missile Neptune complex. The first division of the Neptune 360 MTS missile complex was delivered to the Navy just before the Great Russian Invasion. On the first day of war, February 24th, Zmiinyi Island was captured. On April 13th, the event occurred that our missile specialists, designers, engineers and military forces have been working up to for years. The flagship of the Russian Navy, the cruiser Moskva, appeared at a distance of 120 kilometers from the Ukrainian coast. Our missile specialists saw it. They identified this very big target. Our allies confirmed it. 2 Neptune missiles were launched. Everything happened the same way as at the firing test. Both missiles hit the target. The photos, the footage, and the interception from the Russian tugboat prove it. The latter tried in vain to rescue the Russian cruiser and hundreds of its crew members that were going down slowly and inevitably with the ship. Island 4, Tugboat 2, do you copy? Over. Tugboat 2, I confirm. Contingency 690. Unit 1. I confirm. 690. Unit 1. Do you copy? Moskva 1. 2 holes. The screw stopped. Hit on side. I repeat. Hit on side. The battery is damaged. I confirm. Holes are under the waterline. The bridge is isolated. It is silent. Listing at 30 degrees. Hit on side. Tug. Approach is impossible. Approach is impossible. We are attempting the passive rescue of the crew. The loss of the Russian Moskva cruiser has 2 implications. The first one is, this ship can no longer be involved in air defense against Ukrainian aviation in a large region of the sky. Generally, from military point of view, it is a 116-4 class ship. It is also called a killer of aircraft carriers. Its element is an ocean. The Black Sea is not where such a ship belongs. Well, they lost it. That's it. After the unprecedented destruction of the great Moskva cruiser, other Russian ships did not approach our coast closer than 300 kilometers. We no longer need worry about the danger of the enemy landing in Odessa Oblast. We started planning the liberation of the island. In late March, the Ukrainian army got a taste of the first victory on land. The Russians were dislodged in Kiev, Chernihiv, and the Sumy regions. In mid-April, Ukraine got a first large-scale victory at sea as well. Historically, the same class ship as the Moskva cruiser was sunk for the last time in the British-Argentinian War for the Falkland Islands. On Zmiinyi Island, the Russians had no support. It was much harder to provide logistics. Ukraine systematically started to destroy all equipment delivered to the island, especially the air defense systems. The destruction of the enemy's missile Moskva cruiser, a few landing ships and launches broke Zmiinyi Island's logistics. It influenced the liberation of the island from invaders. In the air, there were glorious Bayraktar unmanned aerial vehicles of naval aviation. During the first days of the war, they had been applied to targets in the Kherson region. On the 26th of April, the control center of the island and the anti-aircraft Strela missile system were destroyed by an unmanned aerial vehicle.
Есть, попал. И ракета выстрелила. Да, в разные стороны. Есть. Звони, пускай по заушкам идут. По заушкам, по бокам идут.
On the 30th of April, the Southern Operational Command reported that 3 anti-aircraft missile systems, a Strela system, telecommunication equipment, and 42 invaders had been annihilated by the strike. Yes. Good. On the 2nd of May, the next targets were the Russian high-speed Raptor military launches. They delivered cargoes for the island, conducted reconnaissance, transported the wounded and the dead. The hysterical scream of the captain of the 3rd Raptor launch was intercepted. He was running from the Bayraktar missiles and crying for help from the air. 81, this is 85. Where is the help from the air? 85, this is 81. Help is on the way, over. How long ago? The Bayraktar is following and shooting us. I repeat, 82 and 83 aren't moving. We are zigzagging to you. 81, this is 85. The Bayraktar is still following us. I repeat, the Bayraktar is still following us. 81, over. The 4th missile was fired. Where is the help? On the 3rd of May, the command center located in the captured frontier post and the ammunition depot were hit.
Есть.
Зайчик мой.
On the 7th of May, a real battle started over the island. Dozens of planes were involved. After the damage to the enemy's air defenses, our aviation was able to bomb the island. A pair of Su-27 pursuit planes overflew and struck targets at low altitude at night. At dawn on the 8th of May, the bold and risky air landing operation started. The hardest thing is making a decision. I call it coming to an agreement with oneself. If you did it, if there were various kinds of arguments at that moment, there were a minimum of them. Everybody realized that it was a hard operation. Nobody could back down. Nobody said no. That's it. Groups of special forces of the Defense Intelligence of the Ministry of Defense and anti-terrorist Alpha fighters of the Security Service of Ukraine were storming the island from the open ramps of the helicopters. They were training at one of the Odessa Oblast airfields before. We flew up to the Zmiinyi island from the nearest point, from a distance of 37 kilometers. It was a water surface. A helicopter is heard from a distance of 8 to 10 kilometers if there is no wind. Therefore, we were heard and seen beforehand. We were heard and seen from a long distance before we could strike the island. It was the hardest thing, because our 8 helicopters were in full view. To crush down the enemy's possibly active combat points, the helicopters fired aviation missiles on the approach to the island. Immediately after the salvo, the pilot struck the decoy heat targets, the traps for the enemy's anti-aircraft missiles. From the helicopters, the island was fired also by machine guns, not only by missiles. But on approach to the island, helicopters were not fired upon. The enemy's air defenses were damaged. As soon as the helicopter touched down, the landing force jumped out. It was a speedy landing. Our task was attacking the building and spreading out. Our group went left. The Neptunes went right. The Alphas mopped up the building. The island was divided along the perimeter. The special forces had to land as quickly as possible. Helicopters had to fly up at once. There was the danger of the enemy's hit. The fighters rushed headlong from the landing compartment. They spread and took positions beyond the nearest slope. They were divided into subgroups of 4. The aim of strong fire in the direction of the nearest museum building was to crush the possible enemy resistance. The special forces of the Security Service of Ukraine landed successfully as well. This is a video from one of the Alpha officers' helmet camera. The Alpha Special Forces of the Security Service of Ukraine took the right flank. The military intelligence officers stopped shooting temporarily lest they endanger their colleagues. The Alpha's grenade launchers were firing the building. Covered with a smoke screen, the group started moving to the museum building. Despite being a rocky island, Zmiinyi has few reliable hiding spots. The soldiers had to watch their rear flank constantly, even with no enemy back there. The museum building ahead of them was surrounded with gabion walls, man-made fortifications. The scout assault party started moving towards them. The soldiers managed to gain a foothold around the museum. Each was controlling his own sector. With the sun, the temperature rose, and the soldiers were sharing water while watching each other's backs all the time. Our boats approached the island, but later were forced to retreat as the enemy fire intensified significantly. So they had to fire back repeatedly. The party started moving forward through the ruins of the frontier post and the lighthouse, destroyed in our air and artillery strikes. Here, the Russians had left behind their demolished command post vehicle and moved to the settlement on the opposite side of the island. There were many buildings, so they had a lot of hideouts. They were moving, changing positions all the time, preparing for defense. They knew the island well, having been there numerous times. I must say, that was quite an epic battle. The most violent gunfights occurred near this unfinished lighthouse foundation, shielded by gabions. The Alpha fighters were acting from the right. Fire density was high on both sides, and the distances were short.
Коля, дивись, бачка спереду. Є шеф! Є шеф армії! Наблюдаю!
The Russians were resisting desperately, firing intensively. They were also under active fire of our grenade launchers. Hand grenades were also actively used. At that moment, all you can think of is pull the ring, count down to 1, throw the grenade. That's basically all that goes through your head. This attempted landing on the island became a sort of reconnaissance. The enemy sustained losses, but so did our Special Forces group. Command's decision was to terminate this assault operation, evacuate the wounded and the dead, and to resume the elimination of enemy forces on the island remotely. Before withdrawing, our soldiers captured a lot of useful enemy tech, like this satellite communication complex. We deepened our experience significantly, especially within our operations on the island, both when we were taking it back, and after that, when we got to work with the captured tech. Back then, they even managed to fly the national flag over Zmiinyi for the first time, while still in battle. In the meantime, our machine gunners were firing intensively at the enemy from their stone cover.
Ниже, ты сильно высоко, ниже бери.
Our actions there had another important purpose, and that was something the enemy didn't expect. There had been several attempted landings, so they had some idea what we wanted to do, but an actual landing and an attack left them in utter shock. And not only that, but we caused serious losses in their ranks. Our drones, combat Bayraktars, and various reconnaissance drones were constantly circling over the northwest part of the Black Sea. They were recording every detail of this epic sea, air, and land battle. But they were also constantly hunted by the enemy air defense. Here you can see at least 3 missile launches from a Russian ship. During the assault operation on the Zmiinyi island, all the helicopters returned to the bases safely. It can be said that luck was on our side, but, as a friend of mine said, the strongest ones are the luckiest. We'd been preparing thoroughly for this, and, luckily, all 8 units completed the task and got back safely. However, 1 boat and 15 soldiers were lost. Among them was the Deputy Commander of Naval Aviation, Colonel Iyer Bedzai, hero of Ukraine, posthumously. His naval helicopter Mi-14 with the crew was shot down by an enemy fighter jet Su-30, but this happened off the shore in Odessa Oblast in the mouth of Dunai, not near the island. As seen in the video of the attack, the helicopter avoids 2 volleys fired from the jet, but then is hit by an enemy missile. On May 8th, Bayraktars managed to destroy a Cerna landing craft, a Tor anti-aircraft missile system, and 2 Raptor-type amphibious assault crafts, seriously damaging a 3rd. That night, a drone camera noticed an enemy Mi-8 helicopter that had landed on the island. The engine was still on, and the assault party was landing. Their thermal silhouettes were clearly seen in the infrared spectre. There were hardly any survivors after the direct hit of our missile. Lately, a party of special forces of the Russian Federation with high-speed boats has been acting in that area. They did everything they could to block any ships in the area. We put an end to that. What could cause a person on an island to leave that island? The lack of ammo, water, and rations. There are 2 ways to take the supplies to the island, by air and by sea. Of course, the latter is preferable, since a ship can carry more than a helicopter, which only has fuel enough for 1 round trip. On May 12th, Ukraine's attack caused a fire on one of the newest Russian logistic support ships, Vsevolod Bobrov, near the island. On May 13th, Maxar Technology shared new shots that featured an assumed missile attack on the Russian Cerna boat, another sunken boat, a floating crane near the island, and also the spot where the helicopter had been struck. On May 17th, 2 American Harpoon missiles struck the Russian tugboat Vasilii Bek on its way to Zmiinyi in another Ukrainian attack. The boat carried ammo, weapons, Russian soldiers, and Tor anti-aircraft missile systems. On June 20th, locals from Odessa Oblast reported numerous explosions on the island. Later, the Southern Operational Command confirmed the attacks on the island, carried out with the use of various weapons. Our coastal missile forces had the mission to prevent resupply of the island. And that, they did well. At the same time, we began firing weapons that destroyed enemy targets on the island from the shore. Eventually, the enemy opted out of retaining the island. The occupants' island garrison suffered significant losses and damage, including a destroyed Panzer S-1 anti-aircraft missile system, a radar set, and some transport. That same day, on June 20th, the armed forces of Ukraine launched a missile strike on the so-called Boyko Towers, the drilling rigs of Chornomornaftogaz, which had been captured by Russians back in 2014. Why were these towers so important to them? Because not only have they been stealing our gas, and the towers themselves had been stolen from Ukraine during the occupation of Crimea back in 2014, but Russians had also placed their electronic warfare units there and used them as a shield for their ships, hoping our magical Neptune missiles wouldn't be able to take aim. However, today, some unfortunate person has smoked on those towers, and now they no longer serve the purpose intended by Russians. On June 27th, the armed forces of Ukraine conducted over 10 precise hits on the island. The enemy sustained losses in material, including a Panzer S-1 anti-aircraft missile system. The Southern Operational Command reported that the invaders couldn't approach the island to provide help or reinforcements after the hits. On June 30th, Ukrainian missile and artillery units launched more missile strikes on Zmiinyi during the night. After that, Russians left it for good. Zmiinyi is undoubtedly today's word of the day. It was, probably, only equally popular the day the notorious Russian warship approached it. But that warship is gone now, for good, and the island is free again. I thank Defense Intelligence, the Alpha fighters, our artillerymen, pilots of the Army Air Force, and the Alexandria Command. Zmiinyi Island is a strategic post. This changes the situation in the Black Sea significantly. There's no safety guarantee yet, no guarantee the enemy won't be back. But this seriously interdicts the occupiers' actions. Bit by bit, we will force them out of our sea, our land, and our sky. This operation was of great importance for Ukraine, because without taking back Zmiinyi Island, any navigation from Ukrainian ports would be impossible. If you look at the timeline, you'll see that once we liberated Zmiinyi, navigation was renewed soon after. Had we not regained control over the island, they would have destroyed us in the economic sense. Apart from the modern artillery systems provided by our Western partners, Ukraine's new self-propelled howitzer 2S-22 Bodana played an important part in the island's liberation. Only existing in a single version so far, it has already demonstrated its unprecedented firing range. A NATO 155mm caliber projectile travels a maximum of 40 kilometers. It's far from easy to hit a target on a tiny island at such distance, and success wasn't achieved on the first attempt. On July 7th, several Ukrainian assault groups landed on the island. Among them were officers of the Military Intelligence Special Forces, the Naval Forces, and Unit 73 of the Special Operations Forces. It's possible to capture an island if you demonstrate an advantage in firepower, which we did. They sent lots of manpower, helicopters, tech and all there, and all that was reduced to ash. And then they made that gesture of goodwill, so to speak. Marine demolition engineers cleared the island of mines. Our task was to clear the territory for our group, to locate and neutralize the mines. 80% of the island was mine-strewn. It was our routine job. The only risk was you had no way to escape, and enemy aviation was constantly circling overhead. And then, all together, they hoisted Ukrainian flags, a smaller one on a pole, and a big one right amidst the destroyed, once threatening, Russian military equipment. This is Zmiinyi Island. I was the first to get to the flag and to pull the Russian rag down. Us hoisting our Ukrainian flags over Zmiinyi was a gift to my beloved. Lots of their equipment lay demolished by our artillery, including a helicopter, struck by our Bayraktar. They also rescued a little black kitten that somehow managed to survive all the shooting. He got a symbolic name, Zmiinyi. Today, I want to give my thanks to everyone who participated in the final stage of the battle for Zmiinyi. Our national flag returned to the island. This operation lasted for 2 months. Intelligence, Special Operations Forces, Alpha Force, Frontier Guards, artillerymen, the naval forces, the air forces. So, may every Russian captain, whether on a ship or on a plane, see the Ukrainian flag over Zmiinyi and know that Ukraine is unconquerable. On July 22, 2022, just 2 weeks after the Ukrainian flag was put on Zmiinyi, the Black Sea Grain Initiative was signed in Istanbul, Turkey. It allowed for the unblocking of 3 of our seaports, Odessa, Pivdenia, and Kornomorsk, for the safe export of Ukrainian agricultural products to Asian, African, and European countries. Russia was forced to agree to it under significant pressure from the international community, and, obviously, as a result of Ukrainian victories in battle, especially on the sea. Since August 1, 2022, when grain export from the Ukrainian ports actually began, we've been able to sell over 24 million tons of grain, despite constant obstacles from the aggressor state. By gaining the first big victory over Russia on Zmiinyi Island, Ukraine took the first solid step to the liberation of all its marine frontiers from the aggressor in the future.